the Teams link. So it's just to make you aware of that before we start. But I'll go through the note with you and hopefully Councillor MacDonald will join us soon. Okay, so welcome everyone to this remote meeting of the Planning Development Management Committee on Thursday, the 4th of November 2021. Please note that this meeting will be recorded and published online for public access after the meeting. However, we also have external people joining us on the meeting, and I would like to remind members of the public that they should not switch on their microphones or camera during any part of the meeting, and they're not permitted to take part in today's meeting. Can all officers switch off their cameras and mute their microphones when not speaking? As the PDMC is quasi-judicial, can I ask that members leave their cameras on at all times but mute their microphones when not speaking? I will now ask the clerk to advise for the members participating today and for all members to confirm their attendance once their names has been announced by the clerk so that it's clear in the recording of the meeting and can also be recorded by the clerk for the minute. There are a number of items of quasi-judicial business for the committee's consideration today. Members are reminded if they leave the room or meeting during any consideration of any application, they will be unable to participate or vote on that item when they return. Please advise the clerk via the meeting chat that you're leaving the room and therefore unable to determine the item. For your information, councillors observing today's meeting should not activate their camera and should mute their microphones. They should play no part in today's proceedings. If members wish to speak, they should raise their hand or say that they wish to speak in the chat channel, and this will be visible to all in the meeting. The clerk and I will monitor such requests. Alternatively, members can verbally indicate they wish to speak, if not possible, by message. If any member loses connection or has any technical difficulties during the meeting, they should alert the clerk, if possible, by private chat out with the meeting chat so that they can make the convener aware of the issue. Also, where a member has made a declaration of interest and has determined that they cannot take part in the proceeding, they are required to leave the meeting prior to consideration of that item. They should advise at that stage that they are leaving the meeting and the clerk will re-invite them when the consideration of that item is concluded. If I could just now hand over to Mrs McBain to do a roll call.
Thank you, Convener. So if you can just indicate for the recording that you're present. Convener?
Present.
Councillor Wheeler as substitute for the Vice Convener?
Yes, present.
Thank you. Councillor Allen?
Present.
Councillor Cook?
Good morning, present.
Thank you. Councillor Radley, who's substituting for Copeland?
Here. Present.
Councillor Hendrickson, who's substituting for Councillor Cormie?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg?
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie?
Present.
Thanks. And Councillor MacDonald is also substituted for Councillor Mallock.
Here, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Convener, all present.
Okay, thanks very much, and thanks for advising of the substitutes. Councillor Wheeler, is it possible that you can switch on your camera? Have you got any difficulties? It's just that part of the process we need to have them on. Councillor Wheeler, are you there?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, John.
Yes, sorry, I'm just experiencing some difficulties. I've had to switch the cameras off. I've joined on my phone.
That's all right. I know that there is some difficulties with the system today, so if we can just take a note of that, Ms McBain, so that we've got it if there's any comment made. Okay, folks, we'll move swiftly on to the agenda today. Just to advise that item 6.2 has been withdrawn for now, and it will be presented to the next PDMC. There's just some additional information that's got to be reviewed to be included. So just so that you know that. Item 1.1, which is motion against officer's recommendation, the procedural note, which is on pages 5 to 6. Just make sure everybody's seen that. 2.1, which is determination of urgent business, there is none. 3.1, which is declarations of interest. Has anyone got a declaration of interest? I'm not seeing any. Okay, excellent. Moving on to the previous minutes of the previous meetings. 4.1 is the minute of the meeting of the Planning Development Management Committee on the 30th of September 2021. It's on pages 9 to 26. It's there for approval. Can we agree?
Agreed.
Yeah, Thank you. At 4.2 is the minute of the Planning Development Management Committee predetermining hearing on the 9th of September 2021. Again, there for approval. It's on pages 27 to 38. Can we agree?
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. And then we move on to the committee planner at 5.1. It's on pages 39 to 40. You'll notice there's 2 items, Leggart, Bray and Marbley. They will be coming to the December meeting. There's additional information and changes being made. That's why they can't be with us today. If we now can move on to the general business of the meeting, which is the planning applications, which are subject to written reports. And at 6.1, we have the annual general effectiveness report. That's set out in pages 41 to 54. Has anybody got any questions? Or Councillor Cook?
Sorry, Convener, I was having difficulty raising my hand electronically, as it were. It was on 5.1, the committee planner. And it was just to ask if we've got a time. We were obviously going to do the draft master plans and development frameworks today, but that's now postponed. I was just going to ask, have we got a time scale for looking at the supplementary guidance and technical advice notes, which will no doubt be due to be updated in due course? I just wondered what the likely time scale was.
Okay, Mr. Dunn.
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Councillor Cook. Yeah, so that work will be going on, I'm going to say, between now and early next year. There's quite a bit of, I'm going to say, background work to be done before we get to that stage. And I think the other aspect is we'd like to have some workshops with yourselves as the planning committee, just to make sure that we feed that into it before we get to that point. There is no immediate, I'm going to say, rush on us to get out for consultation with that information, and we would prefer ideally to see what the report of examination says, because obviously if any of our policies are changed, then fundamentally the guidance behind that will have to change with it. So as I say, we'll certainly be keeping you in the loop, and the idea would be probably to bring back updates to you just to let you know where we're at each stage.
Thanks, that's helpful, and I don't underestimate the amount of work that might be involved for officers, so good luck with that.
Yeah, I think with the green agenda, it's pushing forward. You know, I think that officers are keen to make sure they capture anything, particularly that might come out even of COP26. So we'll watch this space carefully. Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Cook. Yeah, as I was saying, at 6.1, any questions on the annual effectiveness report or comments? No. Oh, Councillor Cook.
Sorry, Convener. Yeah, just to say that I think all the reports that we get for this committee are terribly clear, terribly well written. I don't always agree with officer recommendations, but the reports are very, very clear. So and clearer than some reports I have to read, but I won't say which those are. But I think well done to officers.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Cook. I was just going to sum up and obviously thank officers for their diligence, and to thank the committee. I mean, we've gone through a pandemic, which we're still going through, and we haven't let our duties slip in terms of determining applications and keeping the planning system moving in the city. So I'd like to thank you all personally for your contributions, and I would totally agree with you, Councillor Cook. I think it's been really helpful for members to be able to read a report and see you know, the similar style written right throughout a number of different styles of actual reports, because some of them, it's not just the same thing that they're putting forward. It can be change of use, it can be, you know, major buildings, it can be, you know, whole framework. So I think it's been really helpful for us as a committee, and particularly those who are new to the planning committee. I've been doing it more years than I'll admit to. I think the same as Councillor Allen, but you know, I think it's really helpful that we have a kind of a template that works for the planning committee and obviously works for officers, and hopefully for the public to be able to understand them. I think that's really vital as well. So thank you very much to all the officers, Mr. Lewis, for obviously being at the planning committee at every meeting, and the officers turning up as and when required. So thank you, and also the others from our environmental health, the flooding team, education. You know, they all play a part in making this happen. So as I say, thanks to everyone. Okay, if we can just move then on to 6.2, which we, as I've mentioned, has been withdrawn and will come back hopefully in December. Now we're moving on to the items where recommendation is one of approval. At 7.1, we have detailed planning permission for the formation of an external access stair with balustrade at 1 Mount Hooley Way. It's on page 63 to 80, and we have Mr. Forbes.
Thank you, convener. Yes, this is a detailed planning permission that's being sought for relatively minor works to premises at 1 Mount Hooley Way, which is the former Fire and Rescue Service offices. I'll just share my screen if possible, and hopefully you'll be able to pick up the PowerPoint presentation. I'll just hopefully get that up and running.
Thank you.
Hopefully you're seeing that now. Is that okay at all?
Yeah, that's it there, Mr. Forbes. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so this is, I say, it's a detailed planning application, and this is the site here outlined in red, which is this is just part of the actual wider site, which is that's the main building is outlined in black here, and that's the 3-story office building, which is constructed for Grampian Fire and Rescue, but currently under redevelopment for formation of a retail unit on the ground floor. So the site relates to the northwest corner of the building, which fronts onto King's Crescent, running along here. And to the north, we've got tenement properties, and to the west, we've got houses which are elevated above King's Crescent. It's seen a bit more detail here. What's proposed is external alterations to form an access and egress stair, which would be attached to the north end of the building, and this is outlined extending towards the gable of the tenement adjacent to the site, which this is this building here, and so it's connected to the northwest corner of the building at first floor level. Let me show you on the elevations. Actually, this is in a bit more detail. So the structure is set back from the building line, as you can see here. That's the direct building line between the corner of the tenement building here and the corner of the office building here. So it is set back from the building line, and there's a degree of low-level soft landscaping currently on the site, which I'll come back to in a second. In terms of elevations, you can see it's a relatively modest structure, which is attached at the first floor level, so it's roughly 4 meters above the existing ground level at the highest point, and it just extends to the north and is accessed from ground level here. You can see this is the view from the northwest corner of the building, sort of showing the gable of the existing building, and again, this is the proposed stair coming down to ground level. So a relatively modest feature. In terms of the context here, we've got this is the tenement, which has got no windows on that elevation, so no issues with privacy. And then you've got, as I say, the elevated properties to the west. And again, this is just wider elevational views. And this is the street view photos from ground level looking north up King's Crescent. So you see again here the residential properties to the west, which are obviously set back from the road as well. And in terms of the context here, again, you can see this is the groundwork. So there's a gas meter housing, which again is referred to by one of the objectors, which would have to be relocated, and I think that's part of the wider works, which currently there's not part of this proposal, but that would require to be removed as part of the proposed stairworks. And this is the view looking south down King's Crescent. So again, you can see that this building is recessed somewhat. So although you would clearly see it from heading south along King's Crescent, you would see the stair coming out of the first floor level of the building here. But it's seen in the context of other features, like, for example, chain link fence here and railings. So in terms of the proposal, obviously, it's attracted objection from the Community Council, which is the reason for being referred to committee. They've raised concerns primarily about the visual impact of the development, but also lack of information in relation to the construction details and wider issues in terms of safety and confusion regarding its purpose which if I can just clarify that, as I say, the permission was granted last year for formation of flats at first floor level within the building. Now that's not currently being implemented. The works relate to the existing use. Well, the authorised use of the premises as offices, and the premises is currently being used by a charity. So it's not related to the proposed use of the first floor as residential flats, which I think has caused some confusion. The other issue in terms of the visual impact, as I say, it's felt that whilst there is a lack of information in terms of the detailing of the proposal, I think these issues can be dealt with through imposition of planning conditions relating to the detailing of the works and provision of supplementary landscaping at the frontage here. Also in relation to the boundary treatment, because it's unclear what exactly would be implemented at this point in time. So it's felt that in summary, the principal issue really is the visual impact of the works and the effect on the conservation area. It's felt that because the site lies out with the conservation area and it's a relatively modest structure, that there would be a neutral impact on the wider conservation area, and no justification for refusal on that basis. And as I say, conditions would address the general visual impact of the proposal and result in it being a satisfactory development in terms of compliance with design policies within the local plan. So in summary, that's the position that we are recommending approval subject to conditions. If there's any wider questions, I'd be happy to take them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Forbes. Members, any questions for Mr. Forbes? Councillor Hendrickson.
Thank you, convener. I've just got a few questions. Is this going to be the primary access to the property? Because I know that on the other side of the building there's a car park, so I just wondered whether they would be keeping access from the east side of the building. So you know, is this going to be the primary access, or is it going to be an additional access?
Mr. Forbes.
Yes, thank you for that, Councillor. Yes, if I can just confirm, it's not the primary access as proposed. The principal access would remain within the building as currently exists. So this would be very much an alternative access, provide just for the use of the first floor. Currently, the building is serviced on the eastern elevation. There's the principal access located there and staircase within the building.
Okay, Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, with regards to the conditions, I think I read in the papers there was a possibility of putting in a condition that the stairwell would be sort of softened by the planting of shrubs. I just wondered if there's within that condition, is there something about the height of the shrubs that we could put in to ease the softening? And the other thing that I'm curious about is, I know the area quite well, and I'm just slightly concerned that if we do put those shrubs in, it might lead to a fairly sheltered area for possible activity in the area. I know that there is. I just wondered if I could have some comments on that.
Mr. Forbes.
Yeah, thank you again, convener and councillor. Yeah, basically the condition, the detailing of the condition, all the kind of as would normally take place, the detailing of what would be set out in the specification of planting, that would be required to be provided. So it would be a matter of detail, and certainly the height of the shrubs and or trees for that matter, that could all be agreed post approval. At this point, we don't have a detailed landscaping scheme, but it's something that we'd certainly would seek to require that through agreement with the applicant.
Okay, and the comments, I think Mr. Forbes, he was asking about around the potential of the landscaping almost acting as a shield for antisocial behaviour. I think that'll all be taken into part of the consideration of the planting scheme, won't it? Yes,
that's right. It would come down to the detailing, and that would be one of the factors that we'd take into account in terms of the design of the landscaping specification. But at this point, we don't have a specification that we can present to you.
Okay. Okay. Hopefully that'll give you some comfort, Councillor Hendrickson. Councillor Gregg next.
Yeah. Thank you. At the risk of belabouring this very same point, I'm slightly confused because on page 78 there is the admission that the staircase is more suited to an industrial site, and it is a relatively sensitive area. So I have some sympathy with some of the comments about the visual impact of this structure. So going back to the conditions, I'm just wondering how robust, how rigorous can they be applied to make sure that that this new structure is both mitigated as much as possible in a visual way, and secondly, how can we make sure that it's going to be a safe environment as well? Would there be, for example, fencing as well as the shrubs? I know the site. I've driven along there, and you do see it when you come around the corner. So it's relatively prominent as an entrance and an exit from Old Aberdeen. So I think it is important that we get this right. So as I said, at the expense of belabouring this issue about the condition, it would just be helpful to have more information on that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you again. Yes, if we can go back to conditions, obviously the specification again has yet to be agreed, but condition 1 does go into some detail about what we'd be looking for in terms of further details and finishes. For example, the colour of the proposed metal stair and balustrading. So I think that can obviously be agreed through. I think the expectation would be probably a black colour, because that's what the colour of the railings are on the tenement. Although I think it's specified as galvanised currently, but that would obviously be a matter that could be agreed. So the detailing of that is, as I say, it's not set out in the current proposal, but it's something that we could certainly require, and that's what the condition seeks to achieve. So hence the reason for it. Again, similarly, the extent of any alterations to the building and the frontage of the site, the boundary treatment, I think was the other point about fencing.
Yeah.
That is currently, obviously, as exists currently, there is no railings or fencing along the frontage of the site. So, and it's unclear what is actually proposed, because I think one of the drawings seems to show a gate, but that's, as again, condition 2 refers directly to the need for details of any boundary treatments, for example, walling, railing, gates, or fencing. So all of that is set out in the condition, and it's something that we would seek to require details of. So, you know, at this point in time, we don't have any details of that, but it's certainly something that we would seek to require. And as I say, we're conscious of the fact that the site it's visible, and it's at the edge or just out with the conservation area. So we would expect anything that went up there would be of a suitable specification. But I think the report does make the point that you know, what's there currently at the north edge of the site, we've got a chain link fence with barbed wire on top of it. So that's the existing context, and it's something that we would seek to certainly improve on in terms of any new or replacement boundary treatments. And similarly, the landscape treatment at the edge is very low currently. Because I think the street view photos here are probably slightly out of date, because just in relation to implementation of the retail development, all the planting has recently been reinstated along that edge. So obviously what we're seeking to achieve would be to a higher specification than currently exists in terms of any additional surface treatment.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's really helpful. Could I just come back to that point about the soft landscaping? I had a look at Google Street View, and over the years, the shrubbery there has grown and diminished. So, therefore, how enforceable is the condition about ensuring that there is suitable vegetation there as a means of screening? Because obviously that is something that requires ongoing grounds maintenance. So.
Yeah, I think the condition, the standard period for implementation of a landscaping condition is 5 years. So that's within that initial 5-year period, we would, you know, if, for example, there was any failure of planting, or failure to maintain planting within that period, we would seek to rectify that. But out with that 5-year period, it becomes more of a question mark. It would only be if, for example, there were significant trees on a site. We'd obviously have powers to protect those trees through use of tree preservation order, but that doesn't really apply in this case. So really, the long-term maintenance of landscaping, yes, it's a general issue that we have, but it's something that, in terms of we you know, the standard practice is that we use landscape conditions to require implementation of landscaping during the initial phase of the development, and you know, the 5-year period is this period within which we would seek to rectify any deficiencies in the implementation of the scheme.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Greg. Thank you, Councillor Radley.
Thank you, convener. It was on a similar point, but just slightly different, if that's possible. A wee bit of clarity, if possible. Obviously, on the drawings, the boundary seems to come up to the level of the fencing in the adjacent property, whereas obviously the pavement is quite wide at this point and doesn't seem to come right the way up to the boundary. I've lost my picture.
Yeah, we've got the answers. I think this.
Yeah. So there we go.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. On sort of the proposed site layout, the boundary of the project appears to come to the level of the fencing, whereas currently the pavement is significantly wider than the pavement further alongside the adjacent property. Will obviously we don't know the boundary treatment at this time, but will the boundary of the development change and make the pavement smaller, if that makes sense?
Mr. Forbes.
Thank you again. Yes, just to clarify, no, there's no proposed change to the actual pavement width or the you know, the boundary, the position of the boundary treatment. That would remain, and there's no works that are proposed as part of this proposal. So I think the proposal, as I say, the drawings refer to a 2.1 metre chain link fence along the north boundary and just the existing pavement curb to the pavement. So there's no change to what's currently proposed there, but obviously the condition does require further details of what the detail would be of that treatment.
Okay. Councillor Cook, your hand was up. Have somebody else asked your question?
Mr. Forbes has answered the question I would have asked in respect of one of the questions.
Okay, thanks very much. Members, we have a recommendation to approve conditionally. There's two conditions on page 80, which can I first find out, is there anybody otherwise minded? No, okay. I mean, I think the question that we've gone through has been valid, but hopefully, I mean, in our officers' experience, and I'm sure they'll work with our people in the conservation team to ensure that it marries in as well as it can do with the railings adjacent to it. And again, they'll have that quandary of getting the right landscaping so that it doesn't allow hidey holes, if you like, for antisocial behaviour, but also it contributes to the streetscape. So with the two conditions, I'm happy that we approve and believe is unanimous the recommendations on page 75. Okay, are you happy with that, Ms. McBain?
As we're remote, do you want me just to do a quick roll call?
Yeah, probably that's safest.
That's fine. Okay. Okay, so if members just indicate that they're happy to approve the application conditionally. So, convener?
Approve.
Councillor Wheeler?
Approve.
Councillor Allen?
Approve.
Councillor Cook?
Approve.
Councillor Radley?
Approve.
Councillor Hendrickson?
Approve.
Councillor Gregg?
Approve.
Councillor Mackenzie?
Approve.
And Councillor MacDonald?
Approve.
Okay, thank you. So that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms McBain. We're now moving on to where the recommendation is one of a refusal. The first one is 8.1, which is detailed planning permission for the change of use to a hot food takeaway at 1E Bank Street, Aberdeen. It's set out on pages 81 to 98. The planning reference is 210905, and the planning officer is Ms Brazier.
Good morning. Thank you, convener. Can everyone see my screen?
We can, thank you.
Okay, thank you. This application is for the change of use of 1E Bank Street from a function room to a hot food takeaway. The application site, see if I can go down, that's the best one, comprises the former Divana Lounge, which is attached to the Ferry Hill Tavern, as can be seen on this picture. So the bit in blue is the Ferry Hill Tavern, and in red you can see the application site. To the north runs Bank Street, and to the west and the east are residential properties and an existing pizza takeaway. It is very close to the corner of Bank Street with South College Street, which is one of the main routes from the city centre to Queen Elizabeth Bridge and beyond. The application has been referred to Planning Committee, as a total of 20 letters of objection have been received to the proposal. All matters raised are detailed on page 92 of today's agenda pack, and included concerns in relation to an adverse impact on residential amenity caused by noise and smells, increase in traffic, and lack of parking and bin storage. Both Environmental Health and Roads Development Management have been consulted on the proposal. Upon review of the noise and odour impact assessment, colleagues in Environmental Health did not raise any objection to the proposal, subject to the use of suitably worded conditions in relation to noise mitigation measures and the installation of an extraction ventilation scheme. Roads Development Management have provided extensive comments on the application, which are detailed on pages 90 and 91 of today's agenda pack, but object to the proposal based on the current highway situation due to insufficient parking and available space for servicing and deliveries, which are likely to cause wider issues on the road network in this particular location. So the main issues that need to be considered in the assessment of this application are the impact on residential amenity and the impact on local highway conditions, especially in relation to parking and servicing. So given that colleagues in Environmental Health did not raise any objection in relation to noise and smells, that opening hours can be controlled through a suitably worded condition, and that the position of the bin store is similar as that previously approved for the pizza takeaway, the proposal is considered to have no adverse impact on those aspects of residential amenity. In relation to the second, colleagues in Roads Development Management have objected to the application. So the site is located near the junction of Bank Street and South College Street, and the proposed use is likely to increase the demand for short stay parking, and due to the short duration of visits, it's considered unlikely that customers would look extensively for an available legal parking space in the surrounding streets. There are not many parking spaces in this part of Bank Street, and both through comments from colleagues in traffic management and through some of the letters of objection, it has been demonstrated that there is already significant pressure on existing spaces. It is considered that this proposal would further increase pressure on these parking spaces, which would have a detrimental impact on the residential amenity of nearby residents and would have an adverse impact on road safety. So furthermore, delivery vehicles would also need to make use of the on-street parking spaces in Bank Street. And for this to work, more than one parking space would need to be available outside the premises at the time of servicing. Given the current pressure on parking in this part of Bank Street, it is considered unlikely that this will be a very successful servicing strategy, and it is likely that delivery vehicles would double park, and this could result in an obstruction to Bank Street. This is not considered to be acceptable, and colleagues in Roads Development Management have objected to the scheme for these reasons. Now, if I just go a bit further down, it should be noted that the council is currently preparing proposals for improvements to South College Street. So this scheme shows the wider context, whereas this one is our particular location. So Ferry Hill Tavern is here, Divana Lounge here, Bank Street and South College Street. These proposals would result in the removal of the junction from Bank Street onto South College Street. And especially in relation to servicing, this would provide a betterment compared to the existing situation. So Roads colleagues have caveated that if any permission could be conditioned not to be implemented, until after these improvements have been completed, that the objection will be withdrawn. However, as detailed in the committee report, Scottish Government Circular 4/1998 sets out that all planning conditions should meet 6 tests, and these are that they should be 1, necessary, 2, relevant to planning, 3, relevant to the development to be permitted, 4, enforceable, 5, precise, and 6, reasonable in all other respects. So given that the construction of the improvement scheme to South College Street has not yet started, and that there is a certain element of uncertainty as to when it will be finished, it is the officer's view that this proposed condition to any consent was a good result in a permission that could potentially not be implemented for the majority of its 3-year lifetime. It is therefore officer's view that this would be considered unreasonable and that such a condition would not meet all the 6 tests as set out in that government circular, and it could therefore not be used. The proposal should therefore be assessed against the current road layout, and the objection from Roads Development Management stands. And it is for that reason that it is considered that the proposed change of use would have a detrimental impact on local highway conditions on Bank Street and its junction with South College Street, especially in relation to parking, surfacing and deliveries to and from the unit, and that the increased pressure on existing parking spaces by visitors, delivery drivers and delivery servicing vehicles would reduce the capacity for parking for existing residents living in nearby properties, which would have a detrimental impact on their residential amenity. So are there any questions?
Okay, questions from Ms. Brazier? I'm not seeing. Councillor Cook.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, so just to confirm, if we were to impose a condition that the thing didn't go ahead until South College Street improvements had been granted, and we then think roads would then be happy, but the applicant could then challenge that condition and have a reasonable chance of success and could then go ahead, notwithstanding the fact that the South College Street improvements haven't been started. Am I right in understanding that?
Yes, just like a refusal, an applicant can also appeal conditions. So that will be, because there's a committee decision, it will go to Scottish Government, to DPEA. So it will be a similar kind of appeal process.
Thanks, that's helpful. I thought that was the case, but I just wanted to clarify it in my own mind.
Okay. Anybody else got questions? Can I just check? This is purely a hot food takeaway, is it? I mean, we may have all had a circular from or representation from the applicant about suggesting it. Reading it, I thought it seemed more of a restaurant as opposed to a takeaway. Can we just clarify that?
The application is for change of use to a hot food takeaway.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. That's all I needed to check. Okay, the recommendation, members, is to refuse. Is anyone otherwise minded at this stage? No. I mean, I think we've all got sympathy to bringing back into use redundant buildings, and I'm sure that it could certainly make it a visual improvement in the area. However, we've got to make sure that it's practical in terms of its usage at this precise time. And I think we've heard from Roads that perhaps in the near future, with a change of layout, etc., in that area, that there could perhaps be a more viable opportunity. So we don't want to seem to be dismissing good business away from the city. However, I think at this stage we're obviously facing other challenges, and I think that I'll certainly be happily moving the recommendation to refuse, and I think that's a unanimous decision. Again, just for completeness, Ms. McBain, can we go through the roll call, please?
Yeah, thank you, Convener. So if members can just please indicate that they're willing to refuse the application. So the Convener?
Refuse.
Councillor Wheeler?
Refuse.
Councillor Allen?
Refuse.
Councillor Cook?
Refuse.
Councillor Radley?
Refuse.
Councillor Hendrickson?
Refuse.
Councillor Gregg?
Refuse.
Councillor Mackenzie?
Refuse.
And Councillor MacDonald?
Refuse.
Okay, thank you. So the application is unanimously refused.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, moving on to 8.2, which is the detailed planning permission for the partial change of use of an existing guest house to form Class 3 food and drink and installation of a flue at Granville, 58 Victoria Road, Dice. It's set out in pages 99 to 120, planning reference 210815, and the planning officer is Miss Murphy. Thank you.
Thank you, convener, and good morning, councillors. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. This application relates to an existing 1.5-storey semi-detached property currently in use as a guest house located on Victoria Street, Dice. The application seeks a partial change of use to form a mixed-use unit comprising the existing guest house and a new Class 3 use. The site is located in a residential area and is surrounded by residential properties and a hotel to the north. So I'll just go through some of the site plans. So this is Victoria Street to the west of the property. The site is highlighted in red here. So we have the hotel to the north and residential properties to the east and to the south. This is the site location plan submitted by the agent. A closer view of the site location and the site itself. So you can see we have a semi-detached property here, Avon Place Lane to the north, the hotel beyond that, and garden area within the site. The application is before members as we have received 7 objections, details of which can be found on page 113 of the agenda pack. Environmental health, roads development management, waste and recycling and Aberdeen International Airport have all been consulted on this application and have highlighted no objection. However, environmental health and the airport have requested conditions. Dice and Stonywood Community Council have objected due to concerns regarding the impact on the character and residential amenity. In terms of the floor plans, the existing guest rooms will be retained, but the existing dining room and kitchen area will be altered to accommodate the proposed Class 3 use, with a pizza oven located in an existing outbuilding. A new flue would be required and would extend from the existing outbuilding up the roof to the ridgeline, which I'll show you just now. In terms of the floor plans, as you can see, these are the existing floor plans. So we have the dining room and the kitchen area. As you can see from the proposed floor plans, we have a new cafe seating area, a new servery. The kitchen will be retained, but the utility will be changed to storerooms, and we can see a pizza oven here in the existing outbuilding. These are the elevations, so this is the front elevation. No alterations are proposed, but you can see the flue above the ridgeline here. And this is the north elevation. So again, this is an existing flue, and you can see the new flue here from the existing outbuilding, extending up the roof and terminating just above the ridgeline. In respect of the evaluation, as the site is located within a residential area, the principle of development was assessed against policy H1 residential area, which advises that non-residential uses would be acceptable, but they must be considered complementary to the existing residential use and avoid nuisance. The harmony of uses supplementary guidance highlights the need to protect living conditions of existing residents, a major factor when assessing this application, especially considering that uses such as this have the potential to generate nuisances such as noise, odour and traffic disturbances. While Environmental Health have reviewed the submitted noise impact assessment and odour impact assessment and find its conclusions and recommendations to be acceptable, subject to conditions, the Planning Service does have concerns regarding the impact on the existing residential amenity. Notwithstanding the supporting information, it is considered that this location is not acceptable and would result in an intensification of the site due to the proposed Class 3 use, which based on the floor plan proposed has potential to attract 28 covers at any one time. The impact will be most felt by the adjoining property at 56 Victoria Street, which is located to the south. The door of this property lies only 2 metres from the application property's entrance. And given the use it is expected to operate, which is expected to operate into the evening and night, the potential impact is considered significant, rendering the development to be unacceptable. The supporting information highlights a potential ancillary takeaway use, and where this is a minor element, no change of use will be required, but this is only where the use does not affect residential amenity. In this case, it is considered that such an ancillary use has the potential to exacerbate the concerns already highlighted by the Planning Service and cannot be controlled by way of a condition. Overall, it is considered that such a use would not be appropriate in this location and is likely to have a significant impact on existing levels of residential amenity and therefore fails to comply with policy H1 residential areas. The application is therefore recommended for refusal. I'll just go through some of the pictures of the site. So this is the existing west elevation. And this is the north elevation. So you can see the existing flue here and the existing outbuilding where the proposed pizza oven would be located. And this is the Avon Place looking towards Victoria Street. If members have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms Murphy. Any questions for Ms Murphy? Councillor Gregg.
Thank you. I'd like to ask about the potential for a takeaway service. Is there any indication what kind of scale of business activity that would involve? Yeah, please.
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Councillor Gregg. No, at this point we don't have any information. The supporting information highlights that it will be a minor part, but it could be expanded should there be a need. So at this point, we don't have any information on what level that would be, and that is the concern of the Planning Service.
Right. Okay. So the level of takeaway is not something that can be controlled. Is that right?
No, at this point, because we can't quantify what the takeaway will be, and it's not considered to be a major part, as it does not fall part of the application description, we can't assess it. Although the applicant has identified it as an ancillary part, we can't quantify what that will be, and we can't control it by a condition.
Okay. Thank you. That's great.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg. I had Councillor Cook next.
Thanks, Convener. Just a couple of questions. The first one is if, and I stress the word if in capital letters, bold, if we were to minded to approve this, what conditions would be might be appropriate? I'm thinking the ones you've referenced in terms of what environmental health have said and what the airport has said.
Yes, Councillor Cook. So Aberdeen International Airport have requested a bird management hazard plan, and environmental health have requested that the mitigation outlined in the assessments be put in place prior to operation. We would also look to condition hours of operation, and there would be an advisory regarding an odour management plan to ensure cleaning of the facilities proposed.
Thanks. And second question, it was on one of your slides, and I've lost count of which slide it was. But you were talking about the fact that the site is within 2 meters of the front door of another residential property. It was one of the pictures rather than a plan. Yeah, that's the one. That's it. Yeah. So the application is the one where you're pointing at the brown door at the moment.
Yes.
Yeah. And the next door house with a white door, that's the adjacent residential property?
Yes, the adjoining semi-detached property, yeah.
Thanks. That's me done. Okay,
thank you, Councillor Cook. I had Councillor Hendrickson, then Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Hendrickson.
Thank you, Convener. Councillor Cook sort of touched on the front door. Did I read correct in the papers that there was a proposal to put in a side door to avoid, or is that the front door on the west elevation going to be the only entrance to the restaurant?
Thank you, Convener. And Councillor Henderson, there was initially proposals to alter the bay window here to have a front door, but that has been removed from the proposal, and now the application looks to serve the proposed use via the existing entrance door. So this will be the only door located on the property to provide entrance to the proposed Class 3 use.
Thank you, that's very useful. One further question with regarding to parking. I've looked at the road to the lane to the left of that photograph as we look at it, and it looks quite narrow. Is there any indication that there might be parking issues within the associated with it, or are they proposing to put in on-site parking? That's the view there. It looks quite narrow to me. I just wondered if there's any comments about parking in the area.
So based on the information we have, there is 4 spaces identified here for use for this property. Roads have reviewed the proposal, and there is on-street parking on Victoria Street, which can be utilised, and they've raised no objection to the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor McKenzie. Okay, Councillor McKenzie.
Councillor Hendrickson's just asked what I wanted to ask about parking, but you're saying there's parking on Victoria Street. There's not. I drive along there almost every other day, and Avon Place isn't very long. So I've really just got a comment now.
Okay.
I mean, the hotel has a car park at the back.
Okay. Right. Anything else from anyone? No. Okay. Officers' recommendations are to refuse. Is anybody otherwise minded? No. Okay, that's again content to move the refusal, and if we could just, and that's a unanimous decision, Ms McBain, if you could just do the roll call, please.
Thank you, Convener. So if members can just indicate that they're willing to refuse this application. Convener?
Agreed. To refuse, yeah. Sorry.
Councillor Wheeler?
Refuse.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Allen?
Refuse.
Councillor Cook?
Refuse.
Councillor Radley?
Refuse.
Councillor Hendrickson?
Refuse.
Councillor Gregg?
Refuse.
Councillor McKenzie?
Refuse.
And Councillor MacDonald?
Refuse.
Thank you. So that application is unanimously refused.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the final application for today, which is at 8.3, which is the detailed planning permission for splitting of view and erection of a 2-storey dwelling house and garage and canopy, including access and car parking with associated works at the Anchorage 4 Milton Bury, East Aberdeen. It's set out on pages 121 to 142, planning reference 210717. And we've got Ms Tasker.
Thank you, Convener. I'll just share my presentation. So is everyone able to see this just now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. So item 8.3 relates to an application seeking detailed planning permission for the subdivision of a residential curtilage and the erection of a detached 4-bedroom dwelling house and detached garage and carport, as well as the creation of a new access and associated works. So the application site relates to approximately half the view of a detached bungalow. The existing house lies at the north end of its view and faces south over the garden, which slopes downwards towards Station Road. The site is bound to the west and east by the garden grounds of neighbouring properties, and the southern boundary of the site is screened by a dry stone dyke, which is separated from Station Road by a grass verge. Trees and shrubs currently line the southern boundary of the site, and the surrounding area is characterised by large detached houses of varying styles set within large gardens facing south over the Dee Valley. So here we can see that on an aerial photograph as well. In terms of the planning history then, an application for the subdivision of the curtilage and the erection of a 1.5-storey dwelling house was refused by the committee in 2006. The application has been referred to the Planning Development Management Committee today because 19 letters of objection were received, and also an objection from the Community Council was received. The matters raised in these objections are addressed on pages 141 and 142 of the agenda pack. In summary, they largely focus on the creation of the new access and the impact the development will have on the character and appearance of the surrounding area. Rose Development Management have no objections to the principle of the application, however, have required the submission of further information to ensure its compliance with guidance. The Waste and Recycling team also have no objection. So in terms of the principle of the development, the site lies within an area zoned as a residential area, and policy H1 sets out that the proposal would comply with this policy in principle if it does not constitute overdevelopment, does not have an adverse impact on the character and amenity of the surrounding area, does not result in the loss of value or valuable open space, and it complies with the relevant supplementary guidance, which in this case is the subdivision and redevelopment of residential curtilages. The proposed dwelling would have a rectangular plan with a two-storey projection to the rear sitting slightly below the ridge of the main dwelling. A garage and carport would then abut the west elevation of the proposed dwelling, and the principal elevation would face southwards and take access from a new driveway formed onto Station Road. The dwelling house would be set back from Station Road by approximately 11 metres, and the distance between the rear of the proposed dwelling and the existing dwelling would be 22.5 metres. The dwelling and the garage and carport would all sit approximately 1.2 metres above the level of Station Road. So the proposed dwelling would be 2 storeys in height with a pitched roof at an overall height of approximately 7.4 metres and would be contemporary in design. The rear elevation would face northwards towards Milton Bay East and would be extensively glazed at both ground floor and first floor level. And we have some floor plans as well, which also show the internal layout for the proposed dwelling. So to summarise the evaluation, in terms of the layout, design and scale, the proposal would result in a plot ratio of approximately 27% for the existing dwelling house and 22% for the new dwelling house. It's acknowledged that these figures are lower than the maximum level of development suggested by the supplementary guidance, which is 33%. However, it does also set out that the density of the surrounding area should be reflected in the development for both the existing and the new property. Milton Bay East is characterised by large detached houses, often set within generous sized gardens with a somewhat established building line, particularly numbers 1 to 6. The application site, the 2 houses to its west and the single house immediately to its east, present a lower density character with similar patterns of development, and the introduction of a new house to the front garden would disrupt this pattern. Currently, no houses forming part of Milton Bay East are accessed from Station Road. The new dwelling and access onto Station Road would be visually dominant and would have a detrimental visual impact on the semi-rural ambience of the area, specifically along the northern side of the road, which is continually lined by dry stone dyke and trees. So there are concerns that a precedent could be set for similar fuse splits along Milton Bay East, which in aggregate would change the low density character and an established pattern of development. In terms of residential amenity, there would be a minimum separation distance of 22.5 metres between the existing and the new dwelling, with the floor level of the existing dwelling sitting approximately 4.7 metres higher than that of the proposed, which would ensure that the proposal would not result in a significant loss of privacy, light or overshadowing. There would be an increase in shadow cast to the garden ground of number 6 Milton Bay East, however this would only be apparent in the late evening, and given the extent of garden ground which would be unaffected, it's not considered significant. Turning then to the impact on trees, the proposal would result in the loss of 4 trees. Additionally, the new dwelling would significantly impact the available future rooting environment, which will be required to ensure the healthy, stable future of the remaining trees. The proximity of the trees immediately adjacent to the south elevation of the new dwelling would have a significant impact on light levels reached in the house, and it's likely that future work would be required to maintain a physical distance between the proposed building and the existing tree stock. Then in terms of natural heritage, a preliminary bat roost assessment was requested and submitted, which advised that the trees had either low or negligible bat roost potential, and this was considered acceptable. In regard to parking and access, the Rose Development Management team have advised that they have no objection to the formation of the driveway in this location. However, they would require the submission of further information to ensure its compliance with the supplementary guidance, transport and accessibility should the committee be minded to approve the application today. Lastly, no information has been provided on how carbon dioxide emissions reduction target would be met through the development. However, the submission of this information could also be conditioned. So overall, the pattern of development which has been proposed is deemed out of character with the immediate area. The proposal does not accurately reflect the immediate context within which the application site lies in terms of density and building lines. It would be visually intrusive within this long-established landscape character to the detriment of the visual amenity of the area. Additionally, it would result in the removal of trees would make a contribution to the character of the area and would result in the dwelling being located within close proximity to existing trees, which affects their stability of the future. So officers have concluded that the proposal would conflict with policies D1, H1 and NE5 of the Aberdeen Local Development Plan and its associated supplementary guidance, the subdivision and redevelopment of residential curtilages, and trees and woodlands as set out in today's report on page 142 of the agenda. I also have some site photos which I could take you through as well. So here we have the north elevation of the existing dwelling number 4 Miltimber East, facing onto Miltimber East. Here we're within the application site itself, looking southwards, so beyond the trees and shrubs there is Station Road. Here we're looking northwards towards the existing dwelling house. And lastly, we have Station Road itself, so you can see the application site on the left-hand side there, existing dwellings forming part of Station Road on the right-hand side. So that's all. I'd be happy to answer any questions members have.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Gregg.
Thank you. I have two questions. The first one is about the status of Station Road. I understand that that's a private road. What is the relevance of that for this application?
So we did acknowledge that it is a private road, and we didn't take that as a material consideration when we were assessing the application. That would be up for the applicant to be a civil matter if any permissions were to be required to form that access.
Okay, so that would be a separate stage, a separate process. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks for that. And the other question was about the driveway. There's mention that it would be at 90-degree angle to Station Road, and then the roads evaluation for me isn't entirely clear as to how that would be resolved. That is apparently not an acceptable layout for manoeuvring vehicles. It would just be helpful to have a little bit more of an explanation on that. If that's
yes. So the Roads Development Management team were consulted and raised a concern regarding the driveway not meeting the road at 90 degrees, which is required by the supplementary guidance. However, they did not feel that gave reason to object to the proposal, and if the committee were minded to approve the application today, could be rectified with a condition.
Right, so currently it's not at an acceptable angle, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So
okay.
Further information would be required to ensure that it is acceptable.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kirk. Councillor Cook.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, just want to kind of clarify which trees are coming out. I'm looking at the photo that's on screen at the moment. So the proposed application is to the left-hand side of that, yeah? Yeah,
so just around about here where my cursor is, if you can see that.
Yeah, no, that's clear.
But I
sorry.
I do have a plan from the application itself which shows the trees to be removed, so I can get that up if that would be useful.
That would be really helpful, thanks, yeah.
I'll just share a different screen. So are you able to see this one just now?
Yes, thank you. We can see that.
Yes. So you can see the ones kind of marked with this star are the 4 to be removed to make way for the development.
So but there are others that are still going to be there. Is there a concern around maybe around the routes there?
So in terms of the routes, it's my understanding that there's not a concern specifically regarding the route protection area. However, the dwelling would be within very close proximity to some remaining trees, which would likely affect their future routing system, so could have an impact on them in the future.
Thanks. And then just to look at another of the illustrations that you showed. There was the one that was, I think it was called proposed cross section.
Yeah.
In the slide pack, and I'm sorry, I've lost which number it was, but it's it was 3 or 4 above that. That's the one. So because when I looked at that, I thought, well, it's going to be, and we're talking about the visual impact on the surrounding area. I was looking at that and thinking, well, actually, it's below the level of the existing dwelling, so it won't be seen from that side. And you've got all these big trees to the south, so that should shield it. But if some of these are coming out, will it be that well screened?
Yeah, so you're right. Some of the trees will be being removed, and also as well, let me see if we can see it from here. Some of the trees will be being removed, and I imagine some will be getting cut back as well. Also, this photo was taken more towards the summertime, so I imagine in the winter time it would be more visible from Station Road, and obviously the access being created will allow for views up towards the house.
Thanks. Just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Councillor Radley?
Just on Councillor Cook's point about trees, if there was a requirement for the driveway to be at 90 degrees, would additional trees need to come out? I'm just thinking back to that the tree placement map that you showed us. Would there be that requirement?
Yes, that's a good question. I couldn't confirm that. I think further work would need to be done to see whether they would require to remove any additional trees for that. This proposed site plan here, I don't think is too dissimilar to the site plan from the tree report. So it may be likely that some may need to be removed, but I wouldn't be able to confirm that, sorry.
Okay, Councillor Hendrickson?
Yes, thank you, convener. Can we go back to the picture of Station Road, looking along it? I've got a query. I'm looking at that, and those trees, even in the foreground, all appear to be outside the boundaries of the property. They're certainly the ones that closer to the camera are actually outside, appear to be outside the wall. So I take it that's the line of the wall. Is the wall the line of the boundary, and are the trees that are to the right of it, as we look at, the ones that are going to be removed? I'm just seeking clarification on that, or are those just wild trees that have actually just grown? Are those the trees that are going to be taken out? And if they're not, what happens with those trees?
So just to confirm the boundary then, you can see here the boundary does extend past the dry stone dyke. So that suggests that these trees would be included. If I remember correctly, they are detailed for removal within the tree report. However, they weren't, I don't think they were specifically surveyed as part of the application.
Thank you.
Okay. And any other, I've got some questions, but has anybody else got any? Mine's are actually for the roads colleagues. I must admit, I'm a little surprised at the report by roads, given the history of this particular section of road and the fact that it's a main thoroughfare with no pavements for the Deeside Way. And I would have thought any intensification of traffic on this section would have cause for concern for pedestrian usage. I was just looking for a comment from our roads colleagues, because as I say, there's a huge history with this road, including ambulances not being able to get along it because it's been blocked by parked cars. So, you know, I'd be interested to hear what our roads have got to say.
Thank you, convener. Can you clarify that you can hear me okay? Because I'm
Yes, I can. Thanks, Scott. Yeah, Mr.
Okay.
Lynch.
It's okay. So my thoughts on this were, well, first of all, I checked the there's a roads order, a traffic order for this road, which states that an alternative right of way, not being a right of way enjoyable by vehicular traffic, is in place on Station Road, which I've interpreted to mean, as it doesn't say new vehicular traffic, it suggests that it aims to prevent this ever being a traffic through road, as opposed to not being a road that permits driveways, as this is an existing situation. And as the dwelling proposed has quite a significant driveway, or certainly one big enough that could fit 4, 5 or 6 cars. Obviously, that would be subject to change once they do this 90-degree change that Ms. Tasker mentioned. It doesn't seem like cars would ever really have any more reason to park on the road than any other house on this street. And it's felt that the minuscule increase in traffic that an additional house and an additional driveway would generate wouldn't be any more hazardous to pedestrians than the existing properties.
Well, obviously, there's only a small number that come onto Station Road, but again, the traffic roads order that you refer to was because of the stopping up of the Deeside Way, and it was to provide a safe route for pedestrians to be able to, and cyclists, to use that. And of course, what we've seen is an intensification of delivery vehicles, and there's been a number of near misses. I'm just interested to know if any of that has been, because I know that I've been heavily involved with Mr. Ritchie and Mr. Mackenzie along trying to, and that's why we had to put down double yellows, particularly after the ambulance incident. So it was just really to understand, because there's no way of creating a footpath, and if we're trying to encourage people rather than to have 5 or 6 cars, but to use cycles or walkways, the number of people maybe perhaps living in there, we're not likely to be able to provide any sort of pavement or pedestrian access.
Yes, so we do quite often in newer schemes have shared footway, shared surfaces which are admittedly normally wider than this. It's just felt that because it's an existing situation here and people are aware that there may be the occasional car travelling slowly, it's not felt that a single new dwelling would exacerbate this to any dangerous extent at all.
But are you aware that there's already a situation that exists? So any intensification would surely add to an existing problem.
Yes, I am aware there's an issue. I did consult traffic management, and I have to look back. I consulted another gentleman within the council who was more heavily involved in this roads order. I can't remember his name, apologies. And he felt the roads order was more linked to the Deeside Way and the formation of the AWPR, not specifically set out to prevent the driveways on this road. It was more, again, for not making certain roads thoroughfares for traffic as opposed to driveways. But yes, I am aware there are occasional existing issues.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, any other questions, members? No. Okay, I'll be moving the officer's recommendation. Is anybody otherwise minded? Again, that's refusal of application unanimously. Miss McBain, can you just again do our formal roll call? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, convener. If members just indicate that they're willing to refuse this application, so convener.
Refuse.
Councillor Wheeler.
Refuse.
Councillor Allen.
Refuse.
Councillor Cook.
Refuse.
Councillor Radley.
Refuse.
Councillor Hendrickson.
Refuse.
Councillor Gregg.
Refuse.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Refuse.
And Councillor MacDonald.
Refuse.
Thank you. So that application is also refused unanimously. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thanks everyone. I hate to say this, but our next meeting will be in December, the 9th of December, and I'm sure you'll all have done your Christmas shopping by then. But thank you all for today. That concludes the business for now. And this will be put up on the council's website, obviously, for